Last episode, we talked about the early days of paleoart and how, after an initial boom, there was little change in paleoart in the first half of the 20th century. Dinosaurs were seen as slow, tail-dragging beasts with little inkling of a relationship to birds. This image of dinosaurs is often attributed to Gerard Heilman and his 1864 book, The Origin of Birds, where he dismissed the possible relationship between the two groups. This mode of thought, combined with the pressing issues of a Great Depression and then a World War, led to the less active interpretation of dinosaurs. Wait 40 years and in runs Deinonychus. While studying the fossils of this raptor dinosaur, paleontologist John Ostrom discovered many similarities between it and birds. In his words, Deinonychus must have been a fleet-footed, highly predacious, extremely agile, and very active animal. This was the beginning of a new era, the dinosaur renaissance. When Ostrom published his Deinonychus paper, it included this reconstruction of the animal. This piece was drawn by Robert Bacher, one of Ostrom's students, who became famous for really pushing the idea of warm-blooded dinosaurs. Bacher would continue to portray dinosaurs in his art, even ones not that closely related to birds, as active and lively animals. These ideas were then picked up on by ink and oil artist Gregory S. Paul. Paul was probably the biggest artistic contributor to the dinosaur renaissance, though in order to get a complete understanding of his impact, we need to take another look at our old friend Charles R. Knight. Knight was an extremely skilled artist, so there is good reason that his paleoart was so influential. But if you take a look at some of his work, especially his dinosaurs, you can tell he did not pay the closest attention to the exact anatomy of his subjects. This is odd because he argued that in order to depict living animals in art, you need to understand anatomy, and even his fossil mammals were very anatomically correct. So what's with his dinosaurs? Well, it seems like this had a lot to do with those advising Knight on his reconstructions. Most paleontologists in those days looked at dinosaurs as big lizards, and weren't too concerned with the details of their body. So while Knight's work was beautiful, it wasn't all that accurate. When Greg Paul came around in the 1970s, he realized in order to create an accurate view of the prehistoric world, one had to pay close attention to the anatomy of the subjects. This is where the classical skeletal running pose first comes in, and Paul even published one of the first how-tos of paleoart in 1987. Other artists that began to appear at this time were Douglas Henderson, Mark Hallett, and Ellie Kish. While the more academic side of paleoart received a rather sudden paradigm shift, the pop culture side was a little bit slower to catch on. One of the best ways to see this trend is to look at children's media featuring dinosaurs, The Land Before Time being a good example. Half the time the dinosaurs are active and running around, but there's a good chunk of the movie where they look like they could have walked out of one of Knight's paintings. It wasn't until 24 years after Ostrom published his paper on Deinonychus that audiences everywhere received the pop culture equivalent with Jurassic Park. It's difficult to express how much of a game changer this film was, and I already talked a lot about it when I talked about Jurassic World, so all I'm gonna say is it must have been really nice for paleontologists to see the bird-dinosaur relationship vindicated in a modern Hollywood movie. For better or worse, Jurassic Park changed the way society viewed dinosaurs, and its effects can definitely still be felt. But dinosaur science is always changing, with dinosaur art just trying to keep up. It could be we are in the next great era of our understanding of prehistory, the soft dinosaur revolution. Thank you for watching part 2 of our history of paleoart. We would like to know what you thought. Let us know in the comments or hit us up on Facebook, Tumblr, or Twitter. We have a new segment starting this week called Featured Paleoart. This week's piece is The Evolution of T-Rex by Paleoart. Links to their work in the doobly-doo.